It's important to create visual hierarchy in your designs to help your users understand what's most important. Nobody likes to interact with a monotonous wall of text on a screen. With UI design, it's important not to miss the forest for the trees. It's so easy to get bogged down in choosing colors and font sizes and to forget that there are really important questions that you actually need to ask to ensure that your interface serves the people that it's meant for. Here are a few questions to ask yourself when creating a visual hierarchy. Firstly, what is the story that your page needs to tell? Are you designing an app to help detect equipment failure for something like slurry pumps? Then your page needs to tell the story of the pump's real-time health. Next, you should ask, what does the user need to know first? If you're designing a screen for pump health, the user might want to see a health score, which is an easy metric for them to gauge the pump's current condition. Then you should ask yourself which elements will give the user a general overview and which are more detailed. The user might also want to see the work order history for the pump, but that can be lower down on the page. Let's take a look at this design on the right for Rocket invoicing. You'll see that they have cards with key metrics at the top of the screen. It's important to organize elements from most important to least important when you're designing an interface. Overview elements like health scores and KPIs should generally be placed above the fold. Above the fold is an old term that comes from the newspaper world and describes printing something above where the newspaper was folded. When designing for digital applications, this generally means before the user needs to scroll. Now, depending on your geography, users read from either left to right or right to left, and it's important to understand this when designing your interface. If your users read from left to right, you want to put the most important information in the top left of the screen, since that's what they're going to read first. Now let's look at how to reinforce visual hierarchy in your designs. First, we're going to look at contrast, then repetition, then alignment, and then proximity, or CRAP for short. The mobile app design on the right is a great example of how you can use contrast to direct the user's eye to what is most important. There are various ways to add contrast to a design. In this example, the designer used color to make elements that are important stand out. You can also add contrast through the size of an element, using outlines, fills, or different font families and weights. One way to see whether you have enough contrast in your interface is to do the squint test. If you squint and try and look at the design, you'll see that something clearly stands out, and that's the orange button that says subscribe now. While this test is quite a rudimentary way of evaluating your interface, it will help you get an idea of whether there's enough contrast for the important elements to truly stand out. Now let's look at repetition. Why would you want to use repetition in an interface? Well, it helps the user know what to expect. It also creates consistency and it groups related elements together because they're styled in a similar way. The online learning platform design on the right is a great example of how you can use repetition to create an interface that is really well organized and easy to use. Next, we're going to cover vertical and horizontal alignment in your interfaces. So a common mistake that I see untrained designers make is more often than not center aligning text. Many people think this creates balance because there's equal space to the left and to the right of text. But if you consider that most users either read from left to right or right to left, aligning your text to the left or right is probably a more practical way of doing things. So let's look at vertical alignment. You'll see that there are some bright teal lines that I've added to the design on the right. The words light, startup, growth, and mega are all aligned at the bottom of the text, or what is called the baseline. The paragraphs just under those titles, which say for those just starting out and best for growing businesses, those are aligned at the top, or what is called the ascender. You'll also see that the cards align at the top and at the bottom, and they're all exactly the same height. This is called vertical alignment. It's when the center, top, or bottom of the elements align on an invisible horizontal line. If the elements happen to be different sizes, you'll need to decide how to best align them vertically. Now let's look at horizontal alignment. This is when the center, left, or right side of an element aligns on an invisible vertical line. In most cases, you'll use left align for text if your user reads from left to right. Let's discuss proximity. So when you group elements closely together, they visually tell the user that they're related. In the examples on the right, the teal circles form one group. And next to them, we have the same number of circles, but these are blue. And there's a gap between two groups of blue circles. This just demonstrates how your eye groups elements together based on their proximity, and how effectively grouping elements can help a user understand and navigate information faster. Now it's time to get your pen and papers ready, because in the next video, we're going to start drawing wireframes.